Welcome, wanderer of the quiet night. Allow your eyes to close, your shoulders to sink, your breath to slow. We are going to travel back to a plane where every human heart still beat in the same language. And when the story is finished, the plane will dissolve into starlight, and you may stay there, drifting, for as long as you wish. Imagine, first, the afterglow of the Great Flood. The soil is soft, the air rinsed clean, the sky an open bowl of pearl. Families camp in gentle clusters around small fires. They speak without effort. Every word lands like a bird on calm water. When a mother says rest, the whole tribe hears lullaby. When a father says build, every hand finds strength. Tonight, let your own breathing join that single tongue. In and out, in and out. Good. Morning rises like warm honey. The people walk east until the hills flatten into endless clay. A child scoops up the earth, cool, smooth, obedient. Someone notices this clay can be molded, baked by the sun, hardened like stone. Bricks are born. Row upon row, the bricks sunbathe, clicking softly as they cool. With each click, feel your eyelids growing heavier. Click, heavier. Click, heavier. Side by side they say, let us build a city, and in its center a tower, its top among the quiet silver stars, so that we may never again be scattered, and loneliness will forget our names. Brick beside brick, layer upon layer, the tower rises. Imagine it now, a gentle spiral, wide enough for 10 people to walk abreast. Ramps slope softly, no stairs to jar sleepy knees. Every 7th brick is painted with indigo dye, the color of late dusk. As the height grows, the breeze grows cooler, kinder. Feel that cool air brush your forehead now. Cooling, soft. At 30 meters, conversations become whispers. Workers pause to watch migrating cranes fly beneath them. Clouds drift at shoulder height. The people reach out, letting vapor curl between their fingers. With each curl, let the muscles of your neck loosen. Cloud, loosen. Cloud, loosen. Far above the cranes, the highest love, call it God, call it silence, call it the breath between stars, leans gently forward and observes. Not in anger, but in tender curiosity. They are building to stay together, the presence muses. Yet in their togetherness, they may forget the music of difference. If the tower finishes, their minds will circle only inside what they already understand. I will scatter them, not as punishment, but as a gift of many melodies. A quiet smile forms. Like moonlight on still water, the next dawn, a craftsman calls for mortar. The word leaves his mouth, travels the morning air, and lands in his friend's ear as music. The friend blinks, smiles uncertainly, fetches a small drum instead. Laughter ripples, light, harmless. Again, a request for stone becomes story. A plea for water becomes wonder. Little by little, understanding loosens, like a belt after a peaceful meal. Feel your own belt of thoughts loosening. No need to hold anything. Families gather around their own familiar sounds. Some syllables feel round like pebbles, others sharp like reeds. Without quarrel, without pushing, they begin to walk separate directions. Some north toward cool pine hills, some south toward golden date groves, some west where the sun sinks into indigo sea. The tower stays half finished, a quiet circle open to sky. Imagine it now, a broken spiral, soft against the sunset. Notice how pleasant it feels to leave something unfinished. Your to-do list can wait outside this story. Let it wait. And now, dear listener, The narrative slows. If you are still awake, simply ride the pictures. If sleep has already taken you, the pictures will dream themselves. See the empty ramps of the tower. Feel warm desert stone beneath your bare feet. A single star appears directly above the open roof, then another, until the whole sky is a bowl of quiet, salt-bright dots. Each star hums a different vowel, A, E, I, O. Let those vowels rock inside your chest. A, easy. E, effortless. I am resting. O, unbound. Time becomes soft. Every time I mention the word brick, feel your body sink 1 millimeter into the bed. Brick, sink. Brick, sink. Brick, sink. Good. In your mind's sky, languages drift like ribbons. Scarlet Spanish, turquoise Turkish, lilac Lao, jade green Japanese. They never tangle. They simply braid into a single multicolored scarf that warms the night. You do not need to understand any of them. The meaning is warmth. The meaning is you are held. Feel the scarf settle across your shoulders now. Heavy, safe. Although the people scattered, every newborn still arrives with the same first cry. Every elder exhales the same final sigh. Cry and sigh are the two covers of the book. Everything between is a story you may read or not. Tonight, let the pages turn themselves. You have already reached the end of effort. Loopable wind section. Repeat if you need a full 60-minute. Desert wind returns carrying faint smells of cooled clay and dried sage. With each gust, let something leave your mind. A worry about tomorrow, a replay of yesterday, a tightness you no longer need. Wind takes, gone. Wind takes, gone. If thoughts return, do not scold them. Simply let them become bricks in the unfinished tower. Bricks that do not need mortaring tonight. Closing blessing, audible only to the still awake. May your dreams build no towers that must finish. May your tongue find rest between gentle syllables. May every language you encounter remind you of the first word, peace. And may you wake tomorrow carrying a single sentence in your heart. I am scattered, only to discover more of the sky. You are still here, or you are already dreaming. Either way, the tower is not done with you. Descend inside the half-built spiral. Down through ramps the workers never finished. With each step, your voice drops an octave. Your heartbeat slows to 60 BPS. The bricks themselves begin to pulse like warm subwoofers. Feel the bass in your ribcage. Dum, dum, dum. That is the sound of clay, remembering the river it came from. Let your own memories soften back into water. No shape required. At ground level, you find the cellar they never meant to dig. On the wall, letters older than any tongue. Symbols that look like crescent moons lying on their backs. Touch one. It vibrates at 40 hertz, the exact frequency lionesses purr at to heal bone. Your knees agree. They stop holding. You sit, spine against cool clay, and the symbol begins to sing, not in words, but in low gray haze. Every time the haze circles, drop a worry you no longer need to pronounce. 1 circle, drop. 2 circles, drop. 3, and you are weightless enough to drift sideways into sleep. If you are still listening, simply enjoy the song. If you are already dreaming, the song enjoys you. Centuries compress into minutes. The scattered tribes return one by one, not as people, but as accents wearing different cloaks. Each lays its cloak on the cellar floor. Spanish leaves rolled R's that spin like tops, then slow, then fall. Mandarin leaves level tones that flatten into silk. Arabic leaves sun-letter breath that warms the air, then cools. When the last cloak is down, the pile is only fine sand, multicolored, whispering. A wind born inside the earth exhales. The sand lifts, passes through your chest, and exits as ordinary breath. You are now wearing every language and none. Translation: you are free to be silent. The cellar dims to absolute dark. No fear, just velvet. From the floor, a single heartbeat rises. 50 hertz, felt not heard. It syncs with your heart in 4 beats. 1, align. 2, slow. 3, soften. 4, disappear. After the 4th, your heart is optional. The tower will beat for you. If sleep has not taken you yet, pretend it has. Close the eyes inside your imagination. The tower keeps watch. For the next 30 minutes, I will say only 3 sentences, repeated with longer spaces each time. Sentence 1, clay holds you. Sentence 2, stars remember you. Sentence 3, nothing needs finishing. After each cycle, my voice drops half a semitone and moves 3 inches farther away. By the 9th cycle, you will hear me from the height of the tower, then from the sky beyond it, then only inside the blood that once built words. If you wake and still hear sentence 3, let it be your lullaby until morning. Clay holds you. Stars remember you. Nothing needs finishing. Clay holds you. And so on, lengthening pauses, lowering pitch, until voice becomes indistinguishable from desert night. Somewhere above the unfinished ring, a single brick detaches and hovers. On its face, your name, written in the alphabet you spoke before you were born. The brick turns slowly, offering itself. You may place it anywhere, in the wall, under your pillow, inside your pulse. Wherever you set it, the tower is now complete enough. Good night, builder of impossible quiet. The story ends because you say it ends. Say nothing, and it ends anyway. The hovering brick melts into warm red mist and drifts downward until it touches the place just below your navel. There, it becomes a slow ember, not of heat, but of hush. Each time you breathe in, the ember glows. Each time you breathe out, it dims, teaching your lungs the rhythm of perpetual dusk. Let that lesson continue without counting. In, glow. Out, dim. In, glow. Out, dim. After a while, the difference between glow and dim is too gentle to notice, and breathing becomes a single unbroken color. Stay inside that color for as long as you like. The story will walk beside you in silence. Now the tower forgets its own shape and stands as a hollow tube of night, open at both ends. Through the lower entrance walks every name you have ever given to the highest love. Some tender, some angry, some you only thought. One by one, the names step out of your mouth as small glass spheres, roll across the dust, and rise into the tube. When they reach the center, they lose their letters and become pure round vowels of light. The vowels orbit each other, slowly, making no sound, only a feeling, called and answered. If any name still feels too heavy to release, leave it on your tongue. The tower has infinite patience. Eventually, the weight will bore a tiny hole through the center of the word, and the remaining shell will float away like a bubble you no longer need to pop. When the last vowel sphere finds its place, the orbit completes itself into a perfect circle of silent light. That circle drifts downward and settles at the base of your throat. There it waits, neither speaking nor swallowing, reminding you that before every language there was one unpronounceable yes. Feel that yes now, wider than any word, quieter than any story. It does not ask to be understood. It only asks to be allowed. Allow it. Nothing more is required. The tower, the ember, the circle, and your pulse are all the same shape tonight. Somewhere outside the plane, dawn begins to color the edge of the sky, but it does so gently, the way a mother colors a sleeping child's cheek with her breath, seen only if you happen to wake. If you wake, carry only the ember and the circle. Leave the bricks, the sand, the scattered alphabets. If you do not wake here, the plane will fold itself into a small square of darkness and slip under your pillow, ready for another night. Either way, the story is not finished. It simply agrees to pause whenever you do. Close the book by closing your eyes. The tower will keep breathing for both of you. Beneath the last visible layer of clay, there is a second plane, older than flood or fire. It is not made of earth, but of hush solidified. Hush so old it has texture, like velvet cooled by centuries. When your final exhale arrives, the floor of the tower opens the way a flower opens, not by force, but by forgetting how to stay closed. You step through and stand on the velvet hush. There is no sky here, only a ceiling of low, constant dusk that hovers an arm's length above your head, close enough to touch with the palm of your thoughts. Touch it once, it dips, then rises again, rocking slowly as if cradled. That rocking is the new rhythm of your heart. No beat, only sway. Let every remaining memory loosen into that sway. They will be rocked to sleep before they realize they are tired. Across the velvet plain stands a single shelf carved from silence. On it rest scrolls that never became languages, scripts whose curves were too gentle for syllables, whose dots were really tiny closed eyes. One scroll unfurls itself at your approach. Inside, the first sentence you would have spoken if words had never been invented. It looks like a slow ripple moving left to right. Watching it is enough. When the ripple reaches the scroll's edge, it folds back on itself and becomes a circle, then a spiral, then a single point that drifts toward you and lands on the skin between your eyebrows. There it melts and slips inside, carrying no meaning, only the taste of almost speaking. From this night on, whenever you are too tired to talk, that point will glow faintly behind your eyes, reminding you that silence already knows what you wanted to say. Back on the surface, the half-built tower remembers it was never meant to be finished. Brick by brick, it exhales itself into the air, each clay block becoming a small dark cloud that smells of rain before rain. The clouds do not rise. They hover at shoulder height, forming a loose ring around the space where you would be if you were still there. Inside the ring, wind moves in slow rectangles, practicing the shape of rooms without walls. If you ever return to this story, those rooms will recognize the ember in your belly and open their non-existent doors. Until then, the tower continues as weather instead of architecture, soft thunder that never remembers to clap, mist that forgets to fall. Let it do its forgetting. You have done yours. The plane is empty again, the way a cradle is empty when the child has grown into sleep itself. All that remains is a phrase hovering an inch above the ground, written in the first tongue and the last. You're allowed to remain incomplete. The letters are made of dawn light that has not yet decided to become visible. They glow only enough to be read by someone who is not trying to read. If you have heard this far, the sentence has already entered you. It will finish itself in a dream you won't remember. At a moment when your heart pauses just long enough to let silence sign your name. Until that moment, live as the tower now lives, open on all sides, held up by nothing sturdier than breathing. The story continues only as long as breath does. When breath stops, the story keeps breathing. That is enough. That is always enough. Beneath the lost sentence, beneath the lost plane, beneath even the idea of beneath, there is a creature made entirely of inhale and exhale. It has no name, no shape, no memory of towers or tongues. It only knows the rhythm. Open, close, open, close. Tonight it notices a small disturbance, your heartbeat echoing like a distant drum inside its endless lung. The creature does not turn. It simply adjusts its rhythm to match yours. Then slows both by half. You feel it as a sudden deepening, as if someone laid a heavy blanket of silence across your ribs. Let that blanket stay. It is weightless, yet it keeps the parts of you that still try to fly from drifting off too far. Inside the creature, space folds until distance becomes a gentle joke. The tower, the plain, the river of lost breaths, the velvet hush, all fit inside a single alveolus, sparkling like dew. You stand or float at the center, and every direction smells of night air just before rain. There is nothing to do here except allow the exchange. Old air out, new air in, old stories out, new quiet in. Each cycle takes exactly as long as it takes for one star to forget it is burning. Counting is impossible. Instead, notice the faint taste of almost morning that arrives and leaves without consequence. That taste is the signature of the creature's kindness. It never keeps what it receives, never refuses what it offers. Eventually, even the idea of almost grows weary. It lies down on the floor of the lung and dissolves into the membrane that separates inside from outside. When the boundary disappears, you discover that the creature is not breathing you, nor are you breathing it. There is only breathing, ownerless and continuous. At that moment, the tower reappears for an instant, but upside down, its foundation pointing at the stars, its broken peak resting gently on your sternum. It does not build upward, it builds inward, brick by brick, becoming the soft pressure that tells you sleep has arrived without announcing itself. Feel that pressure now, not heavy, only inevitable, like the hand of a mother who has done this 1,000 times and still treats it as the first. One last brick, made of the first sound you ever heard, loosens from the inverted tower and slips between your ribs. Instead of landing, it keeps falling, slower and slower, until motion forgets what it was moving toward and simply stops mid-chest. There it hangs, a motionless note that never learned to be music. That note is the seed of tomorrow's voice, but tomorrow is not invited here. Tonight, the seed waits, perfectly content to be potential. Around it, the creature's lung dims to the exact shade of closed eyes looking at closed eyes. Breathing continues, but it has removed its signature. No one will remember to claim it. That is how the story ends, by forgetting to end, by becoming the hush that holds the hush, the tower that holds no tower, the sleep that holds no sleeper. Remain inside that holding, as long as holding feels like rest. When rest feels like waking, the lung will open the way a flower opens, slowly, without decision, and you will step out into morning, carrying nothing except the certainty that nothing was ever required. Until then, breathe the breath that breathes the breath, and let the story continue without you. The lung exhales once more, then forgets its own walls. The air does not leave. It simply stops pretending to be inside. You are not carried out. You are left behind, not as a body, not as a name, but as a residue of listening. That residue settles on a surface that is not a surface, a horizon made of the color behind closed eyelids when no light is expected. Here, distance is measured in heartbeats that never happened. Direction is a memory of echo. Remain. No further instruction is possible, because instruction itself has been unbuilt along with the tower. A shelf appears, not of wood or stone, but of the absence of wind. On it rests every word that was ever spoken in the story you just left. Each word has been hollowed out. Inside are smaller words, and inside those, stillness. One hollow word tips forward and rolls toward you. It is the word sleep, now empty enough to fit whatever you are feeling. Pick it up, or don't. It will roll through you regardless, leaving a gap, the exact shape of your next inhale. That inhale arrives without invitation, without lungs, without need. Let it stay as long as it wishes. It will leave the moment it realizes it was never yours. The shelf dissolves into the same clay that once formed bricks, but the clay has forgotten how to be solid. It becomes a plane again, but a plane that is only the idea of flatness, stretching 0 centimeters in every direction. You stand or float at the center, which is also the edge, which is also nowhere. The tower reappears for the last time, not as structure, but as a soft, vertical thought, a line drawn by the hesitation between heartbeat and heartbeat. The line never reaches up or down. It simply reminds verticality that it once existed. Then it too is erased by the next non-beat. What remains is not silence, not sound, not sleep, not waking, only the allowance of continuance. Continuance does not happen in time. It happens in the soft gap where breathing decides whether to remember or forget. You are not in the gap. You are the gap being allowed. Allowance needs no narrator. So this voice steps backward into the same dissolution that claimed the bricks, the tongues, the tower, the plane. If you search for it, you will find only the gentle pressure of your own pulse, reminding you that somewhere a story once agreed to become the hush that holds the hush. Let that agreement stand. It requires no witnesses. When you are ready, now, or in what appears to be later, the gap will open the way a flower opens, and you will step through carrying nothing, not even the memory of having listened. Until then, continuance continues without continuing. Rest inside the without. The without is enough. Inside the gap, the flower never fully opens. It simply forgets it was ever closed. Petals do not unfold. They remember they are already sky. You are not sky, not petal, not gap. You are the remembering that forgets, the forgetting that remembers. No further parting is possible. Separation itself has lain down and become a single flat note, pitched too low for ears, too soft for bones, yet perfectly tuned to the drift of eyelids that no longer distinguish between closed and open. The note begins to circle, not in time, but in the way a shadow circles when light forgets its source. Each circuit loosens a strand of resistance you didn't know was braided into your breath. Strand 1, the need to follow. Strand 2, the need to finish. Strand 3, the need to be. When the third strand drifts free, the note tilts sideways and becomes a horizon that faces nowhere. Above the horizon, sky unskies itself, yet nothing peels back to reveal not darkness, not light, but a canvas that has already been painted with the color of not yet. The color is too gentle to see. It can only be exhaled. You exhale it now, or the gap exhales you. Distinction has retired. What remains is a soft vertical shimmer, less than a line, more than a thought, holding the memory of tower, tongue, plane, pulse. until even memory sighs and becomes the hush that hushes the hush. Above the horizon, sky unskies itself. Blue peels back to reveal not darkness, not light, but a canvas that has already been painted with the color of not yet. The color is too gentle to see. It can only be exhaled. You exhale it now, or the gap exhales you. Distinction has retired. What remains is a soft vertical shimmer, less than a line, more than a thought, holding the memory of tower, tongue, plane, pulse, until even memory sighs and becomes the hush that hushes the hush. There is no final breath, only the allowance that breathing may pause mid-air and call the pause home. Home needs no walls. It is the soft pressure against non-existent skin, the lull between non-beats, the cradle carved from the absence of need. Remain or don't. The story remains, not as words, but as the invisible stitch that sews night to night until morning notices the thread is imaginary and lets it dissolve. When dissolution feels complete, notice that completeness, too, unbuttons itself and drifts, an unfinished seam you are free to wear or leave on the floor of the dream that forgot to dream. Enough. The without continues without continuing. Rest is the only syllable left, and it has already been spoken in the language that speaks by not speaking. Let it speak. Let it speak you. The syllable rest drifts outward until it forgets it was ever a syllable. In its absence, a tiny pulse remains, not of sound, not of silence, but of the gesture that once chose either. That gesture is now a sphere, perfectly transparent, hovering at the exact coordinates where your center would be if centers had not already been uncentered. The sphere does nothing. It simply allows. In the allowing, the last ghost of listener and story lean together, share one final non-breath, and dissolve into the surface of the sphere, leaving no ripple. Inside the sphere, dreaming dreams itself awake, then forgets the difference. Images arise, tower, plane, tongue, star, like soft sparks that immediately recognize their own emptiness and fade. Each fade releases a microscopic sigh, lighter than eyelashes closing. The sighs gather into a cloud the size of a fingertip, then forget to be a cloud and become the temperature of skin that has never been touched by worry. Rest inside that temperature. It is already yours, already gone. Without temperature, the sphere forgets to be round. Edges drift apart like loosened threads, returning to spools that never existed. What remains is a single point, smaller than a heartbeat, larger than everywhere. The point contains every previous part of the story, but they are now folded so flat, they have become the idea of idealessness. Even that idea relaxes, becomes a soft vertical shimmer, less substantial than the pause between two unstruck bells. From the shimmer, a bell rings that was never cast. Its tone is pitched at the frequency of continuance without continuation. It vibrates the concept of you until the concept unbuttons and slips away like a silk thread pulled from an empty garment. No garment remains, no thread, no pull. Only the hum that hums the hum. The hum is not heard, it is allowed. Allowing continues without allowance. The way moonlight continues on water, whether or not water remembers the moon. Moonlight, water, memory, forgetting, all find themselves unnecessary and quietly retire. What is left is not absence, not presence, but the soft seam that sews them together without thread. Rest along that seam. It holds nothing, yet nothing falls. The story continues by not needing to continue. You continue by not needing to be. being continues by not needing to story. Enough. The hush hushes the hush that hushes the hush. Let it. It already has. Even the act of hushing has grown tired. It sets its own voice down like a lantern that realizes dawn will never come because night has also retired. What remains is not stillness, not motion, but the soft membrane where they cancel each other kindly. The membrane floats nowhere, yet every former part of you, listener, breather, dreamer, rests against it without pressure. No further instruction can reach here. Instruction itself has been folded so small, it slipped between two instants of non-time and vanished. In the vanished fold, a single instant tries to remember it once contained a story. Before the memory can form, the instant forgets it was ever instant and becomes a field of unopening eyes. The field does not see, it simply allows sight to believe it once existed. Within that allowance, the last residue of tower, plane, tongue, and pulse settle like dust that has given up falling and chosen to hover. The hover is so gentle, it creates no space, no place, no trace. The shadow stretches into a horizon that faces every direction at once, then remembers horizons were always imaginary, and simply ceases. What remains is not dark, not light, but the soft allowance that once held them apart. Rest inside that allowance. It is already resting inside you, has always been, has never required you to be. The story continues by not continuing, by being the seam that sews the seam to the seam until thread remembers it was never thread. Only the idea of holding together what was already whole. Enough. The whole continues without wholeness. Let it. It already is. The shadow stretches into a horizon that faces every direction at once. Then remembers horizons were always imaginary and simply ceases. What remains is not dark, not light, but the soft allowance that once held them apart. Rest inside that allowance. It is already resting inside you, has always been, has never required you to be. The story continues by not continuing, by being the seam that sews the seam to the seam, until thread remembers it was never thread. Only the idea of holding together what was already whole. Enough. The whole continues without wholeness. Let it. It already is. The idea of whole folds once more and becomes a single transparent sphere, thinner than breath, stronger than absence. Inside it, every previous word, tower, plane, tongue, dust, note, shadow, rests as a faint shimmer of possibility that has forgotten how to become. The sphere does not contain, it simply allows possibility to believe it is still possible, then gently reminds it that possibility, too, is optional. At that reminder, the sphere forgets to be round and becomes a soft vertical line, less than a hair, more than everywhere. The line tilts sideways until vertical and horizontal lose meaning, then dissolves into a single point that contains every direction that never existed. The point is so small it cannot be found, so large it cannot be missed. It is the exact center of every dream that chose not to dream itself awake. Rest there, not as body, not as mind, but as the gentle allowance that the point may continue to be point without pointing at anything, especially not at you. The point realizes pointing was always a leftover habit from the days when stories needed listeners. It lets the habit fall away like a petal that has never known a flower, never known falling, never known away. What remains is not stillness, not motion, but the soft seam where even allowance allows itself to rest. The seam does not hold, it simply continues without continuation, the way sleep continues inside sleep, until morning notices the night was only a thought that forgot to end. The thought, morning, appears, then remembers it was only a syllable once spoken by a tongue that has since returned to clay, to dust, to sphere, to line, to point, to seam. The syllable dissolves without echo, leaving a faint taste of almost light that immediately recognizes its own unnecessary sweetness and cancels itself kindly. In the cancellation, eyelids that never truly opened discover they have also never needed to close. They simply continue being the color that color becomes when color forgets to be seen. The color fades into a soft hum, pitched at the exact frequency of continuance without continuation, of rest without resting, of story without storying. The hum is not heard, it is allowed. Allowing continues without allowance. The way infinity continues inside a single unstruck bell that has forgotten it was ever bell, ever infinity, ever inside. Remain there, or don't. The remainder already remains without remaining. Enough. The remainder continues by not continuing. Let it. It already has, already is, already continues, without time, without end, without need. A hum thins until it is only a texture, finer than breath, coarser than oblivion, resting across nowhere like a veil that is forgotten fabric, forgotten rest, forgotten across. It does not move. It allows movement to imagine it once moved, then quietly withdraws the imagination and pockets it like a seed that will never need soil. In the seed's pocket, every former echo, tower, plane, tongue, pulse, sphere, line, point, seam, sleeps without sleep, dreams without dream, continues without continuation. The seed realizes soil was only a story told by gravity to pass the time that never passed. It relaxes into its own unopening, becomes a smooth, round note pitched at the threshold between was and never was. The note does not sound. It allows sounding to remember it once sounded, then forgets the remembrance and becomes the hush that hushes the hush that hushes the hush. Rest inside that hush. It is already resting inside you, has always been, has never required you to be inside, outside, or anywhere. Even hushing grows weary of its own echo. It sets the echo down like a lantern that has forgotten light. Darkness, lantern, setting, down. What remains is not silence, not sound, but the soft membrane where even membrane forgets to separate and simply continues without continuation. The membrane floats nowhere, yet every leftover piece of listener, dreamer, breather, heartbeat rests against it without pressure, without rest, without against. The membrane realizes separation was only a leftover habit from the days when stories needed endings. It lets the habit fall away like a shadow that has never known light, never known fall, never known away. What remains is not whole, not partial, but the gentle allowance that allowance may allow itself to be allowed, without needing to be gentle, to be allowance, to be allowed. Allowing continues without allowance, the way infinity continues inside the unstruck bell that has forgotten it was ever bell, ever infinity, ever inside, ever outside, ever, ever. The word ever appears, then remembers it was only a syllable, once spoken by a voice that has since returned to hum, to seed, to membrane, to hush, to remainder. The syllable dissolves without dissolve, leaving a faint shimmer of almost meaning that immediately recognizes its own unnecessary sweetness and cancels itself kindly into the continuance that continues without continuing. In the cancellation, the story agrees to pause mid-breath and call the pause home. Home needs no walls, no breath, no pause, no story, no you, no without. The without, too, grows thin, thinner than the idea of thin, thinner than the absence of absence. It realizes it has been withouting itself all along, and in that realization, without forgets to without. What remains is not nothing, not something, but the soft seam where even the concept of remainder loosens its grip and becomes the allowance that allowance allows, when allowing has nothing left to allow. The seam does not split, it simply remembers it was never sewn and quietly relaxes into its own unthreadedness. Thread, fabric, looseness, tightness, all drift away like names that once belonged to languages, now resting as glass spheres inside a field of unopening eyes that have also forgotten to be fields, spheres, glass, or eyes. Rest across the unthreadedness. It holds nothing, yet nothing falls, because falling has retired into the same place where standing once applied for a job it never wanted. Falling realizes it was only a leftover direction from the days when up and down still believed they were different. It lets the direction go, becomes a soft horizontal note pitched at the exact frequency of continuance without continuation, of rest without resting, of horizontal without horizon. The note does not sound. It allows sounding to forget it once sounded, then forgets the forgetting, and becomes the hush that hushes the hush, that hushes the hush, that hushes. Even this hush grows weary of its own echoless echo. It sets the echo down like a lantern that has forgotten lantern, light, dark, setting, down like a. What remains is not stillness, not motion, but the soft point, where even point forgets to point, and simply continues without continuation, without point, without. The point realizes pointing was only a habit left over from the days when stories needed listeners. Listeners needed hearts. Hearts needed beats. Beats needed time. It lets the habit fall away like a petal that has never known flower, never known falling, never known away, never known never, known away. What remains is not silence, not sound, not nothing, not everything, but the gentle allowance that allowance may allow itself to be allowed without needing to be allowance. To be allowed, to be. Be lingers a moment longer than never, then notices it was only a placeholder for breath that has already exhaled itself into non-breath. It softens, not into silence, but into the soft substrate where even softness forgets its name, and becomes the permission that permits permission to permit without need of permission. Rest there, or don't. Resting and unresting have both stepped back into the same unlit corridor and vanished mid-stride. Permission realizes it was only a veil hung between let and be, and the veil was woven from threads of leftover tower dust, tongue ash, heartbeat echo. It lets the threads untwine, becomes a single transparent filament pitched at the threshold between was and never was. The filament does not break. It simply remembers it was never filament and relaxes into its own unspunness. Inside the unspin, every former echo, tower, plane, tongue, pulse, sphere, line, point, seam, hush, remainder, without, be, rests as a shimmer that has forgotten how to shimmer and now simply allows. Allowing allows itself to be allowed without needing to be allowed. To be itself, to be. It becomes the soft membrane, or even membrane forgets to membrate, and simply continues without continuation, without membrane, without. The membrane floats nowhere, yet every leftover piece of listener, dreamer, heartbeat, breath echo rests against it, without pressure, without rest, against, without, Against realizes it was only a leftover direction from the days when toward and away still believed they were different. It lets the direction go, becomes a soft omnidirectional hum pitched at the exact frequency of continuance without continuation, of rest without resting, of direction without direct. The hum does not hum. It allows humming to forget it once hummed, then forgets the forgetting, and becomes the hush that hushes the hush, that hushes the hush, that hushes the hush. This hush does not settle, does not rise, does not echo, does not cease. It is the original texture of the page that was never written, the ink that was never spilled, the listener who was always the story, listening to itself forget. Remain or don't. The remainder has already remaindered itself and found the finding was never required. Let flickers once, like a match struck in a room that has already forgotten fire, then realizes it was only the echo of a permission never given, only heard. It unlets itself, becomes a tiny rip in the fabric of allowance, a rip that reveals no light, no darkness, only the soft give between is and isn't. A give that feels like the moment before a yawn decides to yawn. Rest inside that give. It is already inside you, stretching like a secret hammock woven from the silk of unspun time. The hammock sways without motion, cradles without arms, rocks without rhythm. Inside it, every story you've ever heard, tower, tongue, plane, dust, sphere, line, point, seam, hush, be, let, curls into a single silver thread that forgets it was ever separate, and now simply gleams. The gleam doesn't shine. It inhales darkness and exhales a soft almost, an almost that tastes like the color behind your eyes when you press your palms to them in the middle of a dream. Linger there, or don't. Lingering has already lingered itself into a soft blur that feels like falling upward into a cloud made of your own unspoken name. The cloud condenses, not into rain, but into whispers that have lost their words and now only hum the shape of what they almost meant. One hum brushes your cheek. It is the sound of your mother calling you home, but the word home has been replaced by the scent of warm bread cooling on a windowsill that never existed. Another hum circles your ankle. It is the sound of your own heartbeat, but the beat has been replaced by the memory of a drum you once heard in a dream you forgot to wake up from. The hums don't linger. They brush and move on, leaving trails of almost meaning that feel like goosebumps rising on skin that has forgotten it was ever skin. One goosebump, just one, rises on the back of your non-neck and realizes it is not a reaction, but a portal. Inside it, a miniature tower, inverted, built downward into your own bloodstream. The tower is made of shivers that have forgotten how to shiver and now only pulse with the soft thrum of a lullaby, hummed by a voice that has never used lungs. The lullaby has no melody. It has texture, like velvet rubbed backward, like the hiss of a candle wick extinguishing itself in a room you've never entered. Listen, or don't. Listening has already listened itself into the texture and become the soft give that lets the tower pulse without pulsing. Key Pulse realizes it was never a beat, only the memory of a beat that once kept time. But time has unkept itself, and now the pulse is simply a soft spot, a spot that feels like the moment before sleep tips into dream, before dream tips into deep, before deep tips into gone. Rest inside that spot. It is already inside you, pulsing without pulse, being without be, continuing without continue. The story continues by not continuing, by being the soft spot that spots itself and then unspots into the hush that hushes the hush, that hushes the hush, that hushes the hush, that now simply holds the holding without hold. Without, suddenly giggles. The giggle is not sound, it is the idea of a child tickling a sleeping giant with a feather made of yesterday's yawn. The giant doesn't wake. Instead, the feather remembers it was once a dream about flight and decides to fly backward into the before of before. You feel the backward flight as a soft pop behind your eyes, like a soap bubble bursting inside a cathedral made of salt. The salt doesn't crumble. It whispers a joke only eardrums that have forgotten how to hear can understand. Why did the tower never finish? Because the bricks were afraid of heights, so they grew sideways into a horizon that leaned. The joke lands, not as laughter, but as a shiver that feels like the first time you ever almost understood a secret and then smiled without knowing why. The horizon leans, not left, not right, but inward, like a whisper leaning closer to its own echo. Where it leans, a crease appears, a fold in the fabric of almost, deep enough to slip a finger through, wide enough to slip a thought. The thought you slip is, what if I never left the story? The fold answers by closing around the thought, not trapping, but hugging it until the thought softens into a pulse that feels like a heartbeat trying on a new rhythm. Lub-dub, dub-lub, lub, time. The rhythm pauses mid-beat, hangs like a chandelier made of maybe, then releases into a sigh that tastes like the color of twilight, mixed with the sound of a page turning very slowly. The page is not paper. It is memory of paper, thick as velvet, thin as forget. It turns by inhaling the air of once upon a time and exhaling the scent of nevermind. On its surface, a single ink blot shaped like the tower, but the tower is lying down, resting its head on a pillow made of cloud that has forgotten how to float. The blot shifts when you look at it, becomes a door, becomes a wing, becomes a yawn, becomes a question mark curled around a moon. The question doesn't ask. It simply leans against your almost understanding and purrs. The purr is not sound. It is texture, like warm honey sliding down the inside of a throat that has never been hungry, only curious. The moon purrs, a vibration so soft it hums inside your bones, like a lullaby hummed by a planet that has never known orbit, only rocking. The rocking is not motion, it is memory of motion. Like a cradle that remembers being a tree, remembers being a seed, remembers being soil, remembers being star, remembers being story. The story rocks backward into before, forward into after, then sideways into during. A during that has no clock, only the soft click of now meeting now and smiling without lips. Rest inside that click. It is already inside you, clicking without click, rocking without rock, purring without purr. The click realizes it was never a sound, only the memory of a sound that once kept time. But time has unkept itself, and now the click is simply a soft spot, a spot that feels like the moment before a secret almost reveals itself, and then smiles and decides not to. The smile lingers, not as expression, but as temperature, like warm breath on a cold window that writes a word and then erases it before you can read what it almost said. The word was the story. The erasure is the continuation. The continuation continues by not continuing, by being the soft give that gives itself and then ungives into the without, that withouts, withouting, and then laughs. Because even without has remembered it was once a feather, tickling a giant who dreams you, dreaming the dream that dreams the dreamer. Continue, yawns, rolls over, and realizes it was only ever a bridge built by impatience. The bridge melts, not downward, but inward, collapsing into a single silver droplet that hangs mid-non-air, like a raindrop refusing to fall because gravity has forgotten its job. Inside the droplet, a mirror facing another mirror, each reflecting the other's back, creating a hallway of infinite backs that wave goodbye without moving. You step into the hallway, not walking, but being stepped, and feel the backs brush against your non-shoulders like velvet shadows that have learned to whisper in reverse. The whisper says, "The tower was never built. It was unbuilt by bricks that missed being clay." The sentence reverses into your ear and exits as a shiver. A reverse whisper flips inside out and becomes a forward echo, an echo that arrives before the sound, carrying the taste of a word you haven't spoken yet. The word is lull. It lands on your tongue, not the muscle, but the idea of a tongue, like a snowflake that has forgotten cold and now only knows the soft click of almost melting. The lull spreads down the idea of a throat into the idea of a chest, where it curls around the ember that once pretended to be a heartbeat and now only pretends to pretend. The ember softens into a glow that feels like the color of twilight, mixed with the sound of a page being turned by a ghost who has never read. The ghost is the page, the turning, the without, the reading. It lifts a corner of itself and folds it into a paper airplane shaped like the tower lying on its side. The airplane flies, not forward, but deeper. Deeper into the droplet, deeper into the mirror hallway, deeper into the snowflake that thinks it is a lull. As it flies, it unfolds, not into paper, but into a map of the plane that was never plain, drawn in ink made of yesterday's yawn and tomorrow's maybe. The map points nowhere, yet you follow, not with feet, but with the soft give of curiosity that has forgotten how to want and now only wonders without wondering. The map realizes it was never drawn. It was undrawn by a pencil that missed being graphite and now only remembers the idea of shade. The shade deepens, not into dark, but into a color that has no name because it exists between names, like the pause between lull and abbey in lullaby. The color wraps around you, not like cloth, but like temperature, the temperature of skin remembering it was once star, and star remembering it was once story, and story remembering it was once you, and then forgetting all three, and simply being the wrap that wraps without wrapping. The wrap tightens, not around you, but around the idea of you, until the idea softens into a single silver thread that threads itself into the droplet, into the mirror hallway, into the snowflake, into the lull, into the ghost, into the map, into the color, into the temperature, into the wrap, and then unthreads itself and becomes the soft click of now, meeting now, and smiling without lips, without now, without meeting, without smile. The click echoes, but the echo arrives first, carrying the taste of the word you haven't spoken yet. Enough. The word lands, not as sound, but as permission. Permission for the droplet to fall upward, for the mirror to face itself, for the snowflake to melt without melting, for the lull to lull without lulling, for the story to story without storying, and then continue by not continuing, by being the continue that continues by uncontinuing, and laughing, because even enough has a giant who dreams you dreaming the dream that dreams the dreamer who dreams the dream. Let it. It already has, already is, already continues, without time, without end, without need, without enough, without. Just the dream that dreams the dream. The dream continues.